Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here to talk to you about this chapter of Nanatsu no Taizai Manga chapter 345 titled Heirs. Not Air. Not heirs with a Z, heirs with an S. So yes, this chapter, just as a little cover basis and a few things that I want to bring up. First thing is, this is the penultimate chapter. I know, I said the last chapter was the penultimate chapter, but I did not check the wiki, and there is one additional chapter after this one, most likely than not, manga chapter 300, and if I remember correctly, let me check, I didn't write it down, 346, so that's going to be the final chapter. But then also, something I want to bring up is towards the end of this chapter, and why it's called Heirs, is we learned that Bon and Elaine are having a baby, as well as Elizabeth and Meliodas are also having a baby. Weirdly enough, at the same time. I don't want to assume that they planned it, but knowing how well Bon and Meliodas are friends, like how well they know each other, they probably did the deed at the same time and told the other about it. I'm not saying that they did, but they did. But with those little dips out of the way, and knowing that I'm going to do one more review of this, going right into the chapter, we see the cover, which is just a hand being held by another hand, specifically a baby's hand, showing like the symbolism of like new growth and like the next generation and how they'll be able to live in this peace. But we also get a little cut flash forward to 18 months after the Demon Lord was axed, killed. We actually see two familiar faces that we actually haven't seen in a while. We see Simon and Slater. If you don't remember them, and it's very likely that you don't because I didn't, they're actually part of the Holy Night section called Dawn Roar, and they were known to completing their missions just all the way, always completing their missions to the best of their ability, never failing in that aspect, you know, besides the fact that they've lost a few members, but they're basically going back and forth talking about like how peaceful it is and how like their mission was to exterminate the worm in the mountains as well as secure the bandits. And next panel is them sitting on that worm with the bandits all tied up, and they're talking about like, specifically Simon, he's talking about, oh man, it's so boring. There aren't any challenging missions. And then Slater's like, oh, do you want to take on demons again? And Simon's like, actually, not that challenging. So yeah, it's very peaceful, and especially for those who are warriors during these times of peace, there aren't that really many challenges. But we also get Slater and them talking about the new ruler and how Slater, and we know like he's very devoted to the king, specifically how he's devoted to the king. Oh gosh, I forgot his name. Bartra, that's it. How he's devoted to Bartra and how he views him as the king. But then Simon brings up, oh, do you mean like the current king? And then Bartra just gives Simon this death stare of like, what did you just say, you sick son of a... And then Simon's like, oh, never mind. So Slater elaborates that he's loyal to the Royal Highness, and he will only view the Royal Highness as a Bartra. So there's that. So that kind of shows that even during this time of peace, there are still people with negativity in the world, and this is brought up again in this chapter, but this is just like sprinkling the seeds of like, the world is at peace, but everything isn't sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. But as we cut to them talking about challenges, we cut to Hauser, Gilda, as well as Jericho just sparring with each other. And as we remember, Hauser is basically like the new like Chief Holy Knight, the Grand Holy Knight. And he's just taking them on. He's like telling them, it's like 2v1, but y'all are still so slow. Come on. Y'all are moving so slow that a fly would be faster, like just taunting them, and like they're both like heavily breathing, but I enjoy what happens next. Jericho is like, not to throw your words back at you, but like there's a bug on your head. And it's just like he was talking about like, oh yeah, y'all are moving so slow that a fly could land on your like swords and whatnot, and like a and it's not a bug, it's a fairy, lands on his head, and he starts swatting it away. But in actuality, this fairy has a message for Jericho, and what the message is, it isn't straight out said, but like I said, Bond and Elaine are having a baby, and when it comes to Jericho, she's sort of like Bond's younger sister in a sense, so she immediately rushes off, and Hauser's like, what are you doing? We're training here. She's like, I'm sorry, I have to go to the Fairy King's forest. I had something to take care of. See you later. And like Hauser's just like sitting there dumbfounded while you have Gilder basically like going on the basically it's like, it's great. She thinks, yeah. She doesn't treat you any differently, even though you're the chief holy knight. That's something that we like about you. And Hauser's like, is that supposed to be a compliment? Because like he's like the head of the Holy Knights, he's their chief, but they still treat him as like how he used to be like apparently 18 months ago, and it's just hilarious. But even with that, we then cut to another group of individuals, and let me just say, there are a lot of cuts at this chapter, but this is like a really important cut, because we actually cut to like the 4 remaining members of the Pleiades of the Azure Sky, where we have Adrian, Death Piers, Deldry, as well as, Waylo, how they're remaining members, and how Death Piers is apparently resigned from the Holy Knights, and his 3 other companions are like just trying to understand like why did you resign, and we get his explanation, which is like he's heading back to his hometown of Edinburgh, which is actually a town that I'm fairly certain that we have seen before. I'm pretty sure it's a town that Melios has visited and helped and save the villagers from the demons, I'm fairly certain. But he also talks about how he's planning on like restoring his village and spending remaining time restoring the village and restoring the kingdom to what it once was. And they're like, but why so suddenly? And like his like team members like, but why are you doing this now? You can do it later. And he basically just talks about like how he doesn't want to serve under a kingdom ruled by a demon and a goddess. And then we get like a flashback where we see Deathbeard explains, and we get a little flashback where we see Darari, who is the demon, the commandment of purity. And if you remember her ability is basically like every time she hits you, it gets like harder and harder and stronger and stronger. How she killed like their basically the leader of the Pleiades of the Azure Sky. And then we also get another flashback to one of the angels, one of the goddess race. Her name is Ludo Ciel, who mind controlled all of them. So he's like, yo, I can't be a holy knight for those kinds. It's kind of like the idea that he is. And he talks about how he's gonna make a kingdom on his own for humans, by humans, only for humans. And man, there's a joke to me, man. He's gonna make Leonis great again. Which, depending on the type of person you are, you may agree to that. But he says his farewells, and we also hear a wait, which I cannot say who that is coming from. It could have been coming from Adrian, Deldry, or even Waylo. And it could be like, hey, wait, don't go, or wait, let me come with you. Because we also see them like having like sort of like remembering those times and still having like those painful memories. So they may also agree with him, but it's not specifically stated. Then we get another cut where we see Henderson and Dreyfus. And we see basically Dreyfus dealing with these bottles, which we later on are most like, oh gosh, stop touching your face, coronavirus. But yeah, we see Dreyfus carrying these bottles, which are most likely potions, and they basically talk about like what they're doing right now, how Dreyfus is known as basically like being like the best known swords teacher, while Henderson is apparently running a potion school, and they basically will go back and forth, and we get like a little bit of jab at Henderson from Dreyfus about like, stop touching your face, how Henderson was like really into potions, but he also talks about like, I remember you loved those potions, but make sure you don't neglect your patients. And then basically Henderson talks to Dreyfus about like, but like, why did you leave the Holy Knights? Like, you should have stayed. And he basically says same for you. But he starts thinking like, but yeah, I think like this is where I should be, because if we remember correctly, he basically killed his father, which was the former chief holy knight. So it makes sense that he would like rather resign, but still like want to serve his country. And the same can go for Henderson as well, because he also loves his country. He wants to travel, but he decides that his best suited to remain in the kingdom to help the people, and they both start talking about how a bright future is, like how bright the future is, with especially with their new king and queen. And then we also get another jab from Dreyfus at Henderson, and how like he can't wait. How Dreyfus is like, I can't wait to instruct the next generation. Oh, by the way, and I can't wait for Hindi, for you to continue with your potion school, even if it goes under, even if you don't earn money. And Henderson's just like, wait, what? And then we get another cut to the royal family, where we see Margaret and Gail with Victoria and Grimmore, and how the king's just holding up these little toys, and it's just like, I can't. What do you think of these? Talking about the toys. And basically what we can sum this up to is the king is very happy that he's going to have a grandchild, because Elizabeth and Meliodas are having a child. And we kind of get an understanding of like what Gilthunder, Margaret, Victoria, and Grimmore, what they want to do, which they want to spend alone time with their respective other, because either they've been separated for a long time, in the example of Gilthunder and Margaret, or they've just developed the love for each other, such as with Victoria and more. So they just want to spend time alone, so they're not like ready to settle down. And Victoria is very like open about this, like how she wants to spend alone time and be lovey-dovey with him, but then she also goes against her father, is like, yeah, but first of all, yeah, don't you think like you're being like a little too presumptuous? You're picking out toys. What about Ellie's feelings? Hey, we don't even know the child's gender yet. And the king just has the best clap for that. And it's like, oh, I already know, thanks to my vision, because as we know, he kind of has premonitions, so he already knows what the child is going to be by its gender. So he's like, oh, it doesn't matter, I already know, and he's gonna be adorable. And it's very likely that it is a boy. But we also get another cut to the fairy king, the fairies forest, where we see, give me a second. Yeah, where we see the attendant to the fairy king, Gerard, and how she's chastising the other fairies for spying on Bon and Elaine, and like how they're being nosy. But then she also starts remembering her brother, Gloxenia, and also Ro, her first love, and how they would like to have seen like this world at peaceful, and how she wished they could have seen how peaceful this world is. And then we go to Elaine and Bon, and how Elaine's like, oh, the baby just kicked. And Bon is like, well, was it a kick or a punch? And her response was, I don't know. I can't tell the difference between the feet and the hands. And then she also brings up another fact that, like, something that we might have forgotten, how the fairies are born from the trees and the flowers of the fairy forest, and how this is the first time a fairy is going to be giving birth, as well as the fact that this is going to be the first child born of a fairy and a human, which... new life coming into this world, technically a new race, something the world hasn't seen before. It's gonna be great. But then they also talk about like what they're gonna name this child, and Bond is like, oh, I have an idea. And then we have a final cut to basically Meliodas and Elizabeth remember having a flashback to Zeldris and Gilda, how the last time they met, which apparently they can just go in between the demon world or purgatory and the earth realm, apparently, and they're like surprised that they're having a baby, because this is also something that isn't seen in this world, a child born of a goddess, which she also brings up that she's not really a goddess. She's half goddess, half human. So a half goddess, half human, birthing a child with a demon. And during this entire time, they also remember this, but Meliodas is also thinking to himself, what are we going to name this kid? And like he goes into his little chibi form and scratches his head, doing all of this, and then he claps his hands. I know the child's name, as basically Elizabeth is like, have you figured out the name? I got it. And then as simultaneously at the same time, both Meliodas and Bond say what their child's name is going to be, where in the vein of Meliodas, their child is going to be Tristan, while with Elaine and Bond, it's going to be Lancelot. And just with the name Lancelot, you can kind of understand like these names are references to Arthurian mythology, specifically with Lancelot, and even with Tristan, which I did look up. He was a knight of the Round Table, so it still ties into like the theme of Camelot, Arthur, which you also know we have Camelot, Kingdom of Camelot, and Arthur, so it comes with Arthurian legend. So it makes sense that they'll name it. And the chapter ends with Meliodas being like happy about the world that this child is going to be born in and what this world will lead to next, like what future awaits Meliodas and all of them as we finish off this chapter. So overall, I thought this was a really good chapter, and that's due to the fact that when it comes to how the Seven Deadly Sins is ending, it's ending relatively differently than other manga, because normally what happens is like you have the penultimate chapter where the villain is defeated, where the heroes come out triumphantly, and then the next chapter, which is normally the final chapter, just wraps everything up. But at least for the Seven Deadly Sins, they already had that penultimate chapter. If anything, every other chapter after that, like when the Demon King was killed, that was like the peak of the Seven Deadly Sins. Their final enemy was finally defeated, and everything else was just like wrap up. Even when it came to like Chaos and how he's this new bad, that was just wrap up for Merlin and Arthur's stories. So overall, I'm enjoying this because it's still a little bit more slow paced towards its ending, but it's like touching on everything that we've really wanted. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, Seven Deadly Sins should have ended a while ago. But me personally, I think that it's fine that it's ending now, because if it had ended like around like the first time they defeated the Demon King, we wouldn't have the conclusion of Merlin's backstory and what she really wanted. We wouldn't have had Arthur's dreams fulfilled, and we wouldn't have had the impactful death of Escanor. So yes, it might have seemed like a little bit longer, and it could have possibly been truncated just a little bit, but I'm okay with how it's ending right now, and hopefully you are enjoying how it's ending as well, because most likely not, this is either going to be the last chapter or the next chapter after this one. So if I could give it a score, I would give it a score of 4 out of 5. I think it could be significantly better. Maybe like addressing more of like what's happening with Gulfer and what's happening with King and Diane, as well as with Merlin and Arthur. That could be addressed more in the next chapter, but if this is the final chapter, that's the reason why it'll be brought down to a 4, because we didn't really address all of this ends. But as I said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed filming it. Like, comment, subscribe, and what do you think is going to happen in the final chapter? I'm not 100% sure. I do think that we will be addressing more of Diane, King, and Golden, what they were going to do, as well as Hawks. But if this is the final chapter, I will be fine with it. But like I said, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys